Hello, everyone. Welcome to DEI, a podcast dedicated to discussing and raising awareness on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. My name is Kara Siet, and we're thrilled today to have Denise Hamilton with us. Denise Hamilton is a nationally recognized diversity and inclusion leader. She is the founder and CEO of Watch Her Work, a digital learning platform for professional women. Ms. Hamilton has 25 years of executive experience with Fortune 500 organizations to provide support for employees and bottom line. Ms. Hamilton has been featured on NPR, Forbes, Fox, Huffington Post, CBS, NBC, and many other outlets. Thank you so much for being here today, Ms. Denise. It's a pleasure
I'm,
having you with us.
I'm so happy to be here with you. Thanks so much for sharing your space with me.
Thank you. Can you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you developed your brand as a leading voice for Reason and moving forward?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have been the only woman or the only African American in almost every job I've ever had in my life. And because of that, and having success in these different spaces, I developed this skill set around navigating difference successfully. And of course, whenever you develop a skill set, there's always somebody that wants to pick your brain or ask you some questions. And so people started coming to me, made me a lightning rod for requests for help. I could have had coffee 100 times a day because everybody wanted to kind of take me to lunch. And I thought there's information here. There's something that needs to be tapped. And so I started speaking professionally and starting kind of working with organizations to help them navigate difference. And that's kind of how it was born. I worked for 25 years in the corporate space in I would say late adopter environments that again were the numbers were very small in terms of diversity, and just started building this business around navigating differences and helping people develop the cultures in their organizations that they really want to have.
Wow. Yeah, this is something I aspire to do like in the future. And I watched some of your interviews, and Adam Grant said you took the DI conversation from outrage to insight. Why is there outrage when it comes to DEI, and how do we get to insight? For context, like people are losing their jobs and accomplishments by accusations of being a DI hire. The outrage is leading to firings openly, like denouncing diversity attempts. So, how do those who are being cast aside not defend themselves? Or is the answer to simply take it as history is witness of those who are subjugated and oppressed?
Well, I think the first thing to really keep in mind is that change is always hard, right? No, we think we all want change. We think we want innovation and we want best practices. But the truth of the matter is, homogeneous groups make faster decisions and they're happier with them. That is a hard thing to beat. Now, notice I didn't say they make the best decisions, but they're making them faster, which is efficiency, and they're happier with them, which is morale. It's hard to beat efficiency and morale, right? And so what we do is convince ourselves that the status quo, even if it's just mediocre, the status quo is successful because it feels successful. It feels normal, right? And so people like me and in the future, you come along and we say things like, well, we need to change this, or we need to adjust this, or this needs to be revised. And that can be threatening, right? That's just the bottom line. That can be threatening. If I've been successful using a particular formula, a particular recipe, and you come along and say, no, 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 we need to change the recipe. There's a little bit of a panic there, right? And so I think what we're seeing now is kind of like the normal pendulum swinging back of people being, you know, uncomfortable with discomfort, right? And the way I think about it is if you think about George Floyd's murder, right? People, let me give you an example. Let's say you have some glasses, right, that don't allow you to see the color blue. You cannot see the color blue. What George Floyd's murder did was rip off your glasses And now, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Look at this horrible blue situation. Oh,
Mhm.
wait, now there's blue in healthcare. Oh, wait, there's blue in education. Wait, there's blue at the, wait a minute, there's blue everywhere. So there's a fumbling to put the glasses back on because I don't want to see all the work that has to be done. I don't want to see all the changes that need to happen because it's hard, it's challenging. And I think that if you really are committed to inclusion, it's very easy to do the stuff that's easy to do, to pile on like additional, we could do a potluck for Chinese New Year. We can add 10 employee resource groups. We can do a barbecue on Juneteenth. Like those things are easy to pile on. It's much more challenging to change the actual nuts and bolts of an organization, to change the actual moving parts of how things work. Maybe we've always recruited from the same colleges. We've given preferential placement for people from particular sororities or fraternities. We've done, like there's things we've done all of our lives. And now here people like us come along and say, we need to change that. So I think what we're experiencing now is kind of like a pushback on all of the change.
Right. Yeah. And what are some suggestions that you have for society or for us individually to kind of break the habit of always following the pattern of how things, keeping things how it's always been and not really getting to the bottom of the iceberg with change?
Oh, yes, love that question. So I have a little shrine in my office. There's three things on my little shrine. The first thing on my shrine is an Airbnb sticker because I'm not going to lie to you. If the team had come into me, if I was a venture capitalist and the team came into me and they said, Denise, we have this great idea. Susie and Simon Stranger from the internet are going to sleep in your house when you're not there. I would have said no. It would have been a hard no for me. I would never have agreed to fund Airbnb. And the truth of it is, I would have been wrong. I would have been 100% wrong, a couple $1 billion wrong, right?
Mhm.
And so I keep that on my shrine to remind me that I'm not always right. And the first kind of big hurdle that we have is to just be humble and to realize that we have stories, things that we may deeply believe that may not be right, right? The second thing I have on my shrine is a jar of Vicks Vapor Rub. And I don't know if you're old enough to know, it's like people like me of a certain age, honey, Vicks Vapor Rub it's a little jar and it's like a salve and you rub it on your chest and on your back when you have a cold and it smells like eucalyptus. And your mother or your grandmother would put that on you when you were sick and you just knew you were instantly healed, right? Well, they've done hundreds of medical studies, and Vicks Vapor Rub has no medicinal value. And whenever I say this, everybody pulls out their phone to Google it because they can't believe that that's true, right? But why I keep it on my shrine is to remind myself that even the things I'm sure about might be wrong. Even
Mhm.
the things I'm sure about might be wrong. Maybe
Mhm.
I think a leader has to be tall. Maybe I think you have to have a deep, resonant voice to be able to lead people. Maybe I think we can only get our employees from these three schools. Maybe there's all these things I really believe deeply that may be 100% wrong. Again, my shrine is about humility. It's a reminder shrine, right? And then the third thing that's on my shrine is a little bobblehead doll of Barack Obama. And I keep it there because I have to be very honest with you. When he announced he was running for president, I laughed out loud. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought we would never have a Black president in my lifetime. And not only do we get it once, we got it twice. So I keep it on my shrine to remind me that you cannot let the disappointments of yesterday rob you of the
Mhm.
promise of tomorrow, right? You have to believe that a better future is possible. So you ask, what are the tips? What are my suggestions? Practice humility, test your beliefs, and hold on to your optimism and your belief in what's possible for the future we could have in front of us, right? That's the best advice I can give anybody. You have to let the story change. You got to let it change. Stories hold on to us dearly. They do not want to let us go, right? But if you can have the courage to examine the stories in your life, make sure they're true, and if they're not true, release them. That's how we all move forward.
Right. Yeah. And for me, I feel like DEI, a big part and reason about why it's not moving forward is because a big population does not want the change. And also, personally, I feel like DEI also means acknowledging the inequalities that occurred in the past and just changing it and embracing it for the future. But those who oppose DEI, I think, see it as like, oh, I'll lose my power, money, privilege, comforts, because now I have to share it with a broader community that might not have it before. And like those, like that kind of, do you think those with power and privilege will never truly share? And any effort for DI will be kind of an infinite battle that will reoccur in history.
Well, I'm going to push back on something that you said because I actually don't agree with you.
Okay.
I think you have to stop DEI because DEI works. You
Mm.
don't put this much energy into stopping something that doesn't work, right? So I think that we're seeing real changes. I have to say, I do this work every day, and
Mm.
I see people's behaviors changing. I see, it's so funny. I spoke at an event. I just got back from Las Vegas. I spoke at a conference yesterday, and a gentleman stood up, and his name was Ajay. And
Mm.
he said the first 10 years of his career, everyone called him AJ.
Oh.
And he even said at some point he started calling himself AJ because it's
Mm.
easier. And he said in the last 5 to 10 years, that doesn't happen anymore. People ask him, how do I pronounce your name? They write it down phonetically so they can make sure they say it correctly. Like we see the changes and the behavior modifications that are happening. So what we have to do is not get discouraged. Yes,
Mm.
there's a backlash, but I also think it's a very small group that just has a very big billy pulpit. They just have a lot of money and the ability to kind of make a story where there's no story. So those
Right.
of us that are really committed to this value, I don't know about you, but I don't change my values based on what I see on social media. My
Mm-hmm.
values are my values. And I'm seeing leaders every day that still deeply care and are deeply invested in this work. So, yes, there's loud people who are talking, who are negative, and there are definitely shakeups and changes that are happening right now. But I have to tell you, it's always been like this. It's
Right.
always been like this, right? There's always been a resistance to change. And
Right.
so what we have to do is just keep steadfast, to keep
Mm-hmm.
stick to your values, stick to what you say is important and keep doing the work.
Right. I personally like, what keeps you going, like promoting and embracing DEI, because it's a lot of work facing the backlash, facing people condemning your work, not really acknowledging it. What really keeps you going in this?
Well, I have a personal historical hero, and that's Harriet Tubman, right? And
Mm.
if for those of us who may not know who Harriet Tubman is, she was an enslaved woman in the 1800s. She lived on a plantation. In her 20s, she wanted to run. She wanted to run to freedom. She could not write. She could not read. She had never been more than a mile from the plantation. She did not have a map. She did not have a horse. She did not know anybody in the North, but still, she found the courage to run by herself from the South to the North to secure her freedom.
Mm.
Now, if that alone, if we stop there, that would be a great story. But she turned around and she came back time after time after time after time. And this time she got 3 people. The next time she got a couple more people. The next time, like that is how she did until by different historical accounts, she saved 70 people, a couple people at a time.
Right.
And think about the incredible feat of that, the commitment over years and years and years to do that kind of work. And I have to stop and ask myself, do I have less today than Harriet Tubman had in the 1800s? No, I have more resources, more education, more information. I have so much more.
Mm.
Dare I do less? How dare I do less? Like this is the minimum that I can do is try to create positive change wherever I can, with whomever I can. So how do I keep a positive attitude? How do I stay committed to this work? I read books instead of banning them, right? That's what I
Right.
do. I
Yeah.
read stories of people who have made these sacrifices time and time and time again. And I live sitting in my house in Houston, Texas. I benefited from their sacrifice, right? So
Mhm.
there are people, unfortunately, who are extractors in our culture. They not only don't want to plant trees for the next generation, they literally want to pluck up the trees that somebody else planted, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's unacceptable to me. Like what my job is to make the world a better place, in
Mm.
any way that I can. And that means making my world a better place. A lot of people want to change the world, but they don't want to change their
The
world,
world.
right?
Yes.
Like they don't want to make changes in their own lives. They don't want to look at the things that they do, the choices that they make that reinforce difference.
Mhm.
People always ask me for like little tips and tricks and things that they can do. And I say, just start with the 5 feet around you.
Right.
You have two sons and one daughter, and you
Mm.
really think the daughter should know how to wash dishes. Should the
Right.
sons know how to wash dishes? Right? Like even in your own house, you treat
Mhm.
people differently based on gender, based on all kinds of different things. So
Yeah.
I think the work of just figuring out like where you're going to impact the world, that's why we're all here.
Yes. That really reminded me a lot of my fifth grade teacher because one reason I started this DEI channel is because I live in Florida and
Mhm.
there's a lot of backlash against DEI, book banning, everything. And then my fifth grade teacher was the one who really got me started believing that like anybody can change like the people around them. So that was what got me started. And
Love
yeah.
that. I love that. I love that like the person that made an impact in your life.
Mhm.
And I want to be that for other people, right? And I know I can sense from you that's what you want. I want somebody to be able to call my name and say, "Wow, Denise helped me to be better."
You
Right?
for
Like that's
sure have been, I'm pretty sure, for
but
many
that's the
people.
homework. That's the homework that we all have. And so this is just my way of doing it. And everybody can find their own way, right? The
Mhm.
other thing that we have to be careful about is, this inclusion is a value. Creating belonging, that's a value. That's not
Mhm.
anybody's job. So yes, I am a speaker. I support people and organizations around this work, but I'm not in charge of inclusion in a company. Like
Right.
everybody has to do that work.
Right.
Everybody has to tap in, right?
Yes.
So this thing of like outsourcing goodness to a few people, let's not do that. Like
Right.
no matter what job you have, no matter what position you are, no matter how old or how young, you have
Mhm.
the power to make somebody feel like they belong. I
Right.
really believe that.
Yeah. And you have a incredible, like powerful platform, watch your work dedicated for that. Like what what this is more of a shifting topic towards AI. So what role do you see AI playing in like DEI? And please tell us the landscape of algorithm biases and as a futurist, how do you see that getting better?
I'm actually really concerned about it because, at the heart of it, these are still reflections of people, right?
Right.
Is
They
there
are.
no matter at every process, no, every algorithm has as its root or as its data sets like the behaviors and biases of people. So we're definitely seeing that there's still bias in even how the algorithms operate. I was telling a friend of mine that I have a white girlfriend that came. We attended an event together,
Mhm.
and we went into the bathroom at the same time, came out, and we're trying to wash our hands. And I asked her, could she start the water for me? And she said, what? What are you talking about? I said, can you put your hand under the faucet and start the water for me? Because of some of the sensors for the faucets, they don't work on black hands. She was
Oh,
like, you're ridiculous. That is not true. And there was another woman in the bathroom and she said, no, it's true. And both of us, both black women, stuck our hand under the faucet and the water wouldn't start. And then my friend stuck her hand under the faucet and the water started flowing. Right. And so we have to name those things when we see them. We have to test all of these tools on all kinds of people. You know, I know in Europe more than the United States, facial recognition is used
mm,
to literally
mhm.
identify criminals. Well, what if it's wrong? You literally can arrest
Right.
someone and throw them in jail and they've done absolutely nothing and nobody saw them do it. There's no evidence other than like an algorithm that may have been programmed incorrectly. So I think it's really important to be at the table. And any young person that is listening, I want to really encourage you to dig deep into AI. Don't back away from it, right? This is
Mhm.
the future, and make sure that we're at the table when these conversations are done and when we're seeing problems, that we raise the alarm as soon as possible to make sure that it is as equitable as possible. So, I
Right.
mean, I think that there's a ton of opportunity, but there are just not enough of us at the table when these key decisions are being made.
Yeah. It's for sure a reflection and mirror of like who we try to portray. Yeah. And moving on, the concepts of this is mine or like mine versus yours is also ripping the world apart.
Mm.
And it's also contributing to like who really governs AI and who governs the programming of AI. So should DEI be a constitutional amendment that so that like sharing equity becomes a law?
I think it's really hard to legislate a value. I
Mm,
think hate crimes there should be laws around them. I think
right.
that there are any type of structural discrimination, there should be laws
Mhm.
against that. I think that what we're seeing now is a resistance or a rejection of any kind of codified change. But the reality is, if we don't codify it, we don't change. I always
Right.
have to remind people that Ruby Bridges was 6 years old. Ruby Bridges, the first little Black child to integrate the schools. Um, and if you go back and you look at those videos of people screaming and cursing and yelling at her, she was 6 years old and she had to be escorted to school with the National Guard. And I always, whenever people say like, we can't make laws about these things, they don't have to be legalized. I always say, are you sure? Because every big change that I've seen has required some kind of codification, some kind of governmental enforcement or investment. And so I wish that wasn't true, and I hope that we can persuade people to do the right thing rather than always having to rely on legal structures. But
Mhm.
humans are going to human. And I think sometimes you need a structure to make sure that people don't, discriminate in housing or in banking or in disparate medical care. I just haven't seen the changes happen organically.
Right. And all of those changes that we've been talking about, it all requires like funding, and DEI obviously is not free. Who do you really think should be the one paying for it, or how do you think society as a whole can make those concepts more accessible?
I think who pays for it is a really interesting question because it's like who benefited from it,
Right.
who benefits from the harm, who has been the beneficiary of harm throughout history,
Mhm.
right? And to me, it's it feels very obvious that if something is broken and you're a patriotic person, like you love your country, I always say if you love America, you probably should try loving Americans, right? I
Right.
think you should do anything in your power for your systems to be strong, right?
Mhm.
Who benefits from failing schools? I,
Nope.
I I don't think the country benefits from failing schools or a prison population that's the biggest in the
Mhm.
world. Who
Right.
thinks anybody benefits from that, right? So I think it's very much like society should not it shouldn't have to be punitive, and it's also not charity. It's like
Right.
this is our house that we all live in, and
Mhm.
if we need to fix the pipes, we pay to fix the pipes. If we need to sweep in front of the house, we sweep in front of the house. So I think it should be just a shared responsibility that we all kind of invest in and make sure
Mhm.
that our environment is the best it can be, right?
Right.
That's how I see it. I don't see it as like um, anything more than that. I don't want a permanent underclass. I have a recurring nightmare, a recurring vision that the cure for cancer was already born, but it was born in the wrong neighborhood. So we don't have it, right? Like that, and that's what we're really talking about. Human potential, human genius being wasted, being underutilized. Who wants that? Who benefits from that? No.
Right. Right. I think it's the key is just getting the message to the people who need the message
Mhm.
and making people realize that that's what we need.
I also think the key is the good people in the middle. I think there's an
Mhm.
awful lot of very loud, nasty voices in the world. And there's a huge community
Right.
of wonderful people who want good things and want this to be better, who
Mhm.
don't want to argue about giving lunch to school children, and who want to make sure who don't like that we have our kids crouching doing gun drills to avoid
Mhm.
master. There's such a large population, but that population is kind of quiet. They're
Right.
not as loud as the people squawking and yelling online,
Yes.
right? So it's yes, it's getting the message out, but it's really turbocharging the middle, the people who really want to be good citizens and to be in a place that's safe and who don't want to step over the homeless, who want to figure out solutions for homelessness.
Right.
They don't want to argue, they don't want to ban books in school. They want to
Mhm.
sure that everybody I think there's just more people like that, but I think they're just in their lives, getting their Starbucks and slapping on their leggings and going like they're just living their lives. And if we could get that group to be more invested, right? And more invested
Right.
in our story of the country and what we want the country to look like, I think this would be a lot better. So that's why I wrote my book, and that's why I try to do the work that I do, because I think sometimes we get discouraged. We feel hopeless. The problem is so big, what can I do? We kind of like fall into a hopelessness and a helplessness. And
Mhm.
I think that's really the enemy. There are so many more of us than there are of them. I really believe that. We just need to turbocharge our voices.
Right. Right. That just answered my final question that I was going to ask you, which is, can you tell us more about your book, Indivisible, and what voices or perspective do you wish were heard from the book?
I just want to change the conversation. I want to update the conversation. We are um, settling for a lesser goal, right?
Mm.
I value my work in DEI, but we still are centering one group. Diverse from who? Equal to who, included by who, right? We're still centering. It's like there's one group in the middle, and we're all scraping and trying to get as close to the middle as we can. And I guess what I want to say is there's no middle.
Right.
Nobody's in the middle. Nobody is the center.
Mhm.
And the best example of being indivisible that I can give you is the human body, right?
Mm,
The heart and the brain, they don't argue about which one is important. Both of
they
them
don't.
are important, right? Your legs are the strongest muscle group in your body, and they
Mm,
can take you anywhere that you want to go, but you are going exactly nowhere unless the little bones in your ear that control your balance are working, right?
yes.
So it's not about size, it's not about position, it's not about even role. It's like this only works if all the little parts, the hair in your nose, the lashes on your leg, keep out dust, the wax in your ear, like it all, you need it all. And so as soon as we can figure out how to let every person do their part and bring their gifts, we can figure out how to be indivisible. And I think if we could be indivisible, we could be indestructible. And that's my goal.
Unite everybody. Thank you. This is really inspirational because everything that you've said really, I really agree from deep within, and it's a very good talk with you.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for this incredible conversation and good luck with your studies and with your vision. And I can't wait till we're sitting on a panel together and doing this work.